Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 11th annual Pappalardo Symposium. We hold this event annually to give our distinguished Pappalardo Fellows the opportunity to present their research. And before we do, however, we have to thank the gentleman who has made this program possible, who has supported it through all the years, who has inspired us and welcomed us into his family, and greatly enlarged the physics family, as the attendance in this room will show. Let's give our thanks and appreciation to Neil Pappalardo. Every year we have some introductory remarks made often by one of the past fellows of the program, but this year we're delighted to have Howard Messing, who is the president of Meditech Corporation and a good personal friend of the department and of Neil's, to give the introductory remarks. Welcome, Howard.
Hi, everybody. Whoa, that's loud. You're probably wondering why Ed asked me to speak, because I am an MIT graduate, but it was course 6, and I'll tell you the real reason that he asked me to speak. If you go back 38 years ago, 1974, I was in graduate school. I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do with my life, and I met Neil. Neil interviewed me, and then guess what? He gave me a fellowship to do what I wanted to do. So I was the first Pappalardo Fellow. Difference between you and I is that my fellowship has lasted for 38 years now. But so truly it was a wonderful experience to have my career for the last 38 years, and I'm grateful to Neil as well. Seriously, though, I think what I want to talk about is why I am interested in the physics department and why I think that the work that you do here is so important. And to do that, I think I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what physics means to me. Now, first of all, I have to tell you that, in the world of business, when you go to a meeting, it always starts with small talk. And what's the small talk with people you've never met? You always talk about sports. How's the home team doing, right? I have absolutely no interest in organized sports. Can't do the talk. But this department fills that void for me. If you think about it, Ed's the team manager, right? The physicists are like the players. The theorists, they're like the pitchers, putting stuff out there, see if they can hit it, and the experimentalists are the batters. And then, of course, you've got the Hall of Fame, which is the Nobel Prize. So there's really a lot of analogies. Of course, the customers of mine don't actually, they don't actually appreciate it when I ask them, how's a California customer, when I ask them, how's Berkeley doing? They don't get it. But seriously, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I'm really a card-carrying member of the Sputnik generation. For those of you who maybe are a little bit too young to know what that means, in the late 50s, the Russians launched the first satellite. And I can remember standing out on my porch with my father. I was only, I think, 7 or 8 years old, and being very scared because we could see this thing going overhead, and on the radio it was beeping, and we didn't know what the Russians were going to put up there. And as a result of that, the country then went through about a 10 or 15-year period of putting a lot of money, it's hard to believe, but putting a lot of money into science and engineering. And I really think that was the last time that scientists were respected in our culture. And certainly it's been downhill ever since the late 70s. And I think that that's an important thing that this department does. Anyway, having been interested in the Sputnik, I then became interested in science in general. I have no idea why, but in the first grade, I was the kid who was picked out to exhibit in the science fair. So I had a little boat with a magnet, and I would explain it. And from there, I graduated to the Museum of Natural History in New York City. And my love for astronomy grew and grew to the point where I became the president of the Junior Astronomy Club at the museum. And I was one of those kids with a big telescope. And for me, for my birthday, what did I ask for? I asked to be driven someplace dark so I could use it. And I thought I was on a career to go to school in physics and astronomy. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I ended up meeting someone from the NYU Academic Computer Center who introduced me to computers. And my love affair with computers started when I came here to MIT. I really had a hard time deciding whether I wanted to do physics or electrical engineering. I did both for a while. Then around about 806 or 807, I decided I couldn't do both. I remember not understanding the Zeeman effect and being told at the time that it's all right if I didn't have an intuitive feel so long as I could do the math. And that didn't sit right with me. So I went on in computer science. But I've always been an armchair physicist. My son who's here, can tell you I read every popular book there is on physics. I try to understand what's going on, and I just love it. Around 10 years ago, Neil and I started talking physics at work. And actually, it's very interesting. He and I sometimes sit huddled up in a corner, and the staff around us think we're discussing some important business issue. And in fact, we discuss things like, if nothing gets out of a black hole, how do the gravitons get out? Good question. Still don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there's someone here who can maybe explain that to us. We never came to a conclusion on that one. So at that time, Neil was getting involved here in the physics department, and he invited me to come, I think, to either the first or the second Pappalardo, this event. And I discovered that the people in this department are absolutely wonderful. They really like talking with, I'll say, an educated layman, which is what I consider myself, about their work. When my son was 14 years old or so, we came and Wolfgang's here, right? Yeah. Wolfgang took us on a tour of his laboratory, spent a good hour and a half explaining everything he was doing, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I think it was from that moment that I became dedicated to making sure that this is the department that I supported and wanted to be involved with. So that's how I got involved here. Now, why do I still think it's important? Well, first of all, I do think that the basic research done here is extraordinarily important. It's almost trite to say, but I'll say it anyway. There are lots of spin-offs of what physicists do that then become important to society as a whole. There's a quote from Marie Curie, who was a pretty good physicist, about how when she started on radium, she never thought that it would be used in hospitals. It never occurred to her that that would be the thing that would drive it. So there is that, and unfortunately, that seems to be the only argument that our politicians respond to, so that's also why it's important to keep stressing that as an issue. But for myself, beyond that, I think it's important just because of the basic curiosity of man. There's a lot of talk about bucket lists, right? A list of things that you want to do before you die. I'm kind of a couch potato, so my bucket list is just questions. I have a bunch of things that I'd like to know before I die. And aside from the obvious ones about family and my company, really all the rest of them are questions that I think physicists can answer. So, for example, I want to know, is the universe really digital or not? Is it discrete? I would really love to know that. I'd like to know, Sarah can help me with, are we alone? I think is another question I really, really want to know. And again, how did anything get here? I'm not big on religion or superstition, so I'm very fascinated in, particularly in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of discussion. I guess a couple of books were published about how something could come from nothing. And then there's a bunch of physicists who said, how dare you even ask that question? But those are the kinds of things that I want to know. And I'm convinced that the people here can help me achieve my bucket list before I die. You have plenty of time. Don't worry about it. So in closing, I just want to say that I think the people in this department are wonderful. To the Pappalardo Fellows, I want to say how inspiring you are, your enthusiasm, your curiosity, the fact that you really work hard is something that is really prized by me, prized by, I think, the other supporters in the department. And I look forward to seeing what happens with you as the years go on. Take care.
Thank you, Howard, for those wonderful words and for the perspectives that you bring to our audience. We're often very caught up in the scientific details of what we do, and that's one of the reasons why it's so valuable for us to interact with our alumni and friends of the department, because you help us to see the big picture of the value of education and research that we do at MIT.